Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is SincerelyOghosa. If you haven't come across my channel before, I upload beauty, lifestyle and straight talking videos. Today's video is going to be a straight talking video about Oprah, Meghan, Harry, the interview that happened so today's Monday. So I didn't stay up to watch it. It came out 1 a.m. UK time, and I think at some point in the evening in the US, and the UK were like, they were all like, oh yeah, we're gonna wait up to watch it. I was just like, girl, no. This last week I've been struggling with insomnia. I went to bed, but I ended up waking up at 4 a.m. and kind of recapping everything anyway. And here are my thoughts, I guess. Chaos, absolute chaos. I've never seen this type of Republican energy probably in my entire life, actually. Like, I mean, when I say Republican, sorry, that was a fly. When I say Republican, I mean Republican in the sense that I don't believe in the structure of having a monarchy, not in the American, I mean, the American sense was kind of the same in the beginning, but anyway, the point is, I don't believe in having a royal family in general, not even in Africa. I just think it's problematic, but it's a lot more problematic in the West, where there's empire, and the monarchy is a structure, really it's kind of a symbol in the UK, so they don't have any political power, as you may know. Well, not outright. They don't have any legally stipulated political power. They can have influence, but they're not allowed to make any changes to laws. And so what they are, in a sense, is a symbol for Great Britishness and for British Empire, and to let people know that the empire is still up and running, shall they say. So the interview was about 2 hours long. I don't know why Americans TV is like that. Like, in terms of commercials, the adverts, you don't need to be that long. It doesn't. But I think that's what made the interview longer. But yeah, I mean, from what I have seen, I have done quite a lot of Googling and some research, but like, from what I have seen, Oprah seemed really good at like making sure there was no room for misinterpretation or misunderstanding. But there were some things that unfortunately weren't able to be like solidified, to be like, who said this and who said that. So some of the things that I was intrigued by were the fact that I think it's very interesting that Prince William has basically grown into his father. There have been allegations of him basically knocking around with someone else who may or may not be Kate's friend. And that's been an allegation going on for a while. And it is very convenient that the press just choose not to talk about it. I mean, the press they've really shown their asses in the last couple of weeks. Just the lack of real reporting. Like, what's going on with modern journalism, please? What's going on? I thought we had a real resurgence. You know, the 80s, the 90s, you guys were doing your jobs, 2000s even. What's going on now? Because Matt Hancock is passing out contracts to his friends to ensure that his friends get richer during a pandemic, during a Pacaramo. And that is not being reported at all. Prince Andrew and these really, really troubling allegations are still looming. What's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell, please? Because I heard that she gave her statement. She gave a written statement to the police. What's going on with that? These are the things that I would like to know. I have questions. I have some questions. But instead, all we're seeing is just this onslaught of dislike against Meghan. And it's really, really unfortunate. And so I don't think Oprah mentioned Andrew. I know that was off limits for sure. Like, she started it like, oh, nothing's off limits. I was like, girl, there's definitely stuff that's off limits. But I say all that to say, what was I saying? I was saying something about, okay, Meghan, Harry, the interview. I lost my train of thought, but it's fine. So they started the interview, and Meghan was talking a lot about her mental health. So trigger warning, I'm about to talk about suicide and suicide related issues, so please take your leave if you need to. And she was basically talking about how the abuse by the press pushed her to get suicidal thoughts, and the fact that the royal family did absolutely nothing, which doesn't shock me. I mean, it's the whole interview, if you could summarize it, is like disappointed but not surprised. So it didn't shock me because, I mean, I see a lot of tweets being like, oh, the Crown, we can't base all of this stuff on the Crown, but I have to say, Peter Morgan, you really depicted these people as nicer than they are in real life, because to say to your family or to your in-laws that you are feeling suicidal and not to have any help at all, for them to not mind that the press are dragging you every single day, I mean, it's really scary. It's really scary. She literally had to do ring upon the HR and call the HR for the royal, like, for who in charge of the royal family's affairs. And that is really the height of dysfunction, right? Where you have to call HR because the family aren't doing anything. Anyway, so that was a really, really troubling revelation. And what it really showed me was how powerful the press are, but when it comes to racism, because like a lot of the time when we talk about racism, we do inevitably compare it to racism in America and the fact that, you know, it's covert and overt and these different types of insidious and what these different types of racism feel like. But clearly the impact is still the same, because for the press to exert this type of racial trauma on a person that they're driven to suicide really speaks a lot to the UK and how bad racism is here. It's really not something to take lightly. The fact that racism is so terrible here that it's driving people to suicide. And the fact that the press is supposed to be free, the press is supposed to be unbiased, the press is supposed to actually hold political figures to account, the press is supposed to hold the monarchy to account, and they're using it really as a personal racist vendetta against one person. And not even actually just racist and sexist against one person, and that's what's really scary about it. And even today, there's just been a lot of like interesting stuff to do with the press, because today's Monday, interview came out 1 a.m. today. And so obviously in the UK, because of the news cycle, the first thing people are going to talk about in the press is Meghan and this interview with Oprah and Piers Morgan. I hate actually saying his name. Piers Morgan was on GMB with Susanna Reid talking to Dr. Scholar about the Meghan interview. And it was very, very interesting that his views, his pro-monarchy, pro-royalist, pro-queen views have... First of all, I just don't get how he can be screaming at someone every day on TV and still have a job. A black person literally could never. Like, we keep on looking for these comparisons of white privilege. Like he talks about BLM and white privilege in June, and this is still what he's. I mean, it's just a joke. But when he was literally shouting over Dr. Scholar. If I can, I'll get the footage and put it in here. He was literally shouting over Dr. Scholar about how the Queen is a victim. She's worried about her dying husband. And Meghan and Harry are slinging abuse at her on television. What about all of the years that the press has been slinging abuse at Meghan? Some of it actually just not true, which is actually legally called libel. No one was doing anything about that. No one was defending her then. She wasn't a victim. And it was a stark image of the fact that when people are just like, oh, there's no racism in the UK, and you see this image of Piers Morgan shouting over a black woman who's talking about racism in the UK. We see Charlene White on ITV, I believe she was on Loose Women, talking about racism, and people asking her, why isn't casual racism okay? Why isn't it something we can joke about? What is casual racism? Does that mean there's formal racism? Like, all of these things really drive home the point that racism here is a big issue, and clearly it's having not just a physical impact, not just a financial impact, it's also having a mental impact. And the royal family really can shove this whole mental health campaign stuff down the toilet because they themselves are perpetrators in this kind of abuse. Anyway, back to the interview. Another thing that was really interesting or concerning is the fact that there was some members of the royal family who were concerned about Archie. Well, he wasn't born yet, but Archie's skin tone. And it really just shows you how racist you have to be worried about your 25% black grandchild's skin tone. They also didn't want to give him a title. They didn't want to give him any security. Like, do you know how mad that is? Like, obviously abolish monarchy, but like, why is it that only when it's to do with the first, I don't even know, can we call Archie a person of colour? When we have the first grandchild who has a black grandparent, we have a person who is in line for succession with a visibly black grandparent. All of a sudden, the line of succession, we can't see it anymore. She's missing. She's off Twitter. She's deactivated her accounts. That's very, very concerning, and it really draws home the point of what I've been saying about this whole Queen Charlotte thing, and the fact that Bridgerton was really big and bossy about the fact that Queen Charlotte was black and she had amazing hair. Don't get me wrong, her outfits were lit. I actually hope they get awarded for their costume because their costume design was amazing. But by the by, it really draws home the point that there's no way she could have been black. What, NW50 black? Like, if we're to say that there was a black queen, why is it then that the royal family are so shook of a child who has a black grandparent being in line for succession? If they were, surely they were okay with a whole black woman being queen. You know, anyway, historically, when you start digging and when we start doing our research, it's not true. The rumor or the point in her ancestry where we look at the blackness in her ancestry dates back, okay, so we're saying 1800s is when she was ruling as queen, right? It dates back to at least the 13th century. On her, there's a Portuguese noblewoman, and that's where this side comes from, like a more connection. From how many generations removed? What, like 9? I mean, come on. If we're to say that she was black based on at least 9 generations ago, then we're saying that eugenics is okay. We're saying that the one drop rule is okay, that it's not racist, then it is. So apparently Charles no longer picks up, well, he wasn't picking up Harry's calls. Oh, that's what I was talking about the other time. I don't think William speaks to Harry right now either, or that they don't speak to each other, because Harry mentioned in the interview that the relationship there is space. And that basically means, like, I'm related to you, but I do not mess with you. That's basically what it means. And I think it's really sad how in families, like the family dynamic, how like, sometimes the sins of the father can be repeated and it becomes the sins of the son. Especially when we look at the allegations of Will like cheating on Kate. And when we look at the fact that Will literally, there were sources close to William that said that he didn't like how his father was being portrayed in The Crown. What, you're gaslighting dad? You're cheating dad? You're gonna come out of the woodwork to defend. You guys haven't said anything about The Crown. The royal family have made a point to be very, very silent, very stumm about The Crown. But the one thing that you want to come out and say is that you don't like how your dad is being portrayed. The same dad that was gaslighting, emotionally abusing and cheating on your mother. Looking away and not caring when your mother was bulimic. There's a word for that where I come from. That's called an abomination. That someone could even say that. Anyway, I think it's really interesting that William has essentially become his father. I think that's really interesting. Like, when you look at like how kids grow up in a dysfunctional home and the children look at their parents and they say, oh, that's never going to become me. I'm never going to do that. And you end up, God forbid, not me, the person ends up doing what their father was doing or what their mother was doing or what they saw their parents doing. I think that's really sad. interesting but super, super sad. And I think the difference between the two brothers is why this unraveling has happened. I will make a last point to say that we do need to be careful not to mix up like solidarity and standing. I think celebrity culture can be quite dangerous, and like people have spoken before about how celebrity culture is like, it's damaging when it's to do with like political figures, but I also want to talk about when it's to do with figures who have a vested interest in empire, a vested interest in colonialism, to make it seem like they're a champion of some sort of cause, especially when it's to do with racism and in a sense socialism, because it's kind of like, oh, like they're bringing down the monarchy by speaking out about this. And it's like, had the crown, had the firm, had the establishment dealt with this in a more insidious way, if they had dealt with this more privately, if they had spoken about Meghan's race or spoken about her in a derogatory manner behind her back without her knowing, had it not got to the toxic state that it is, had they stood up to the media while still holding racist views, because you know British people, they know how to do that as well. CC Boris Johnson in that email. Had they done that, I don't think Harry and Meghan would have left. I think they would have stayed. Essentially, they're still involved in a white supremacist institution. I'm sorry. I know that sounds a bit harsh. I know that doesn't sound nice, but it's true. I mean, I always say like Buckingham Palace, Sandringham, Kensington Palace, all of these places, all of their assets, they never worked one day. Not one day did they work for any of those things. They didn't work. They didn't go to work. They didn't go to farm. They didn't go to the shop. They didn't clock in. They didn't clock out. It was given to them. And you have to think, okay, well, all of these places, all of these palaces, they're dripping with the blood of black and brown folks. That's really what's happening. So we can't see them step away from that institution because they've been burned fairly. It's fair that they speak about what they've been through, and it's good that we stand in solidarity with them, but it all seems very personal to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, they haven't come out and been like, oh yeah, the crown need to give back the artifacts that were found in Nigeria, and the crown need to give back the jewels that were stolen from places like Sierra Leone. They've never done that. They're not trying to challenge the foundation of the institution. And Harry basically said that when he was just like, Meghan would have been a great asset for the Commonwealth, because he understood that her charm and her relatability is something very similar to what Diana had. And Diana also, for a minute, was a great tool for the Commonwealth as well, which is why people in Jamaica, people in Nigeria, when they talk about Diana, they light up. Do you know what I mean? She was still part of the royal family. She was introduced to them by monarchy. It's a complicated one, and I just think, let's not stand. Let's be supportive, but let's not stand. Let's support, but also be critical, deeply critical of monarchy and that institution. Let's try and do both. But yes, I hope you've enjoyed watching. I also did a podcast episode on this. I also have a Patreon, which is linked below. Please do subscribe. I hope you enjoyed watching. Please let me know what your thoughts are below. And yeah, I'll see you guys in a few days. Bye.